Surely I spoke of things I did not understand, things too wonderful for me to know. You said, "Listen now, and I will speak. I will question you, and you shall answer me." My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. Therefore I despise myself, and repent in dust and ashes. After the Lord had said these things to Job, he said to Eliphaz the Temanite, I am angry with you and your two friends, because you have not spoken the truth about me, as my servant Job has.
So, the book of Job. We all think we know it, right? We've all heard that phrase, the patience of Job. But what if that common understanding, what if it misses the entire point? Today, we're going to explore how this ancient story, it's about something far more powerful, divine validation. Let's dive in.
Have you ever been there? Your life just falls apart. You're trying to hold it all together, and you can just feel people looking at you, thinking that exact question, that quiet, cutting suspicion that your suffering must somehow be your own fault. If you've ever felt that sting, then believe me, this story is for you. The book introduces us to our main character, Job. And listen, Job isn't just a kinda good guy. He is set up to be the ultimate case study, the absolute gold standard of human righteousness. And his life is about to be put to the ultimate test. Now, right off the bat, where this story takes place is a huge clue. It's set in the land of Uz, which is somewhere outside of ancient Israel. And that's not just a random detail. The author is signaling to us from the very beginning, hey, pay attention. This isn't just a story for one group of people. This is for everyone. The lessons here are universal. So the text paints this picture of an absolutely stellar guy, right? It gives us 4 key descriptions. It says he was blameless, which means he had real sincere integrity. He was upright, meaning his actions were straight and moral. He feared God, which is about a deep, genuine reverence, not just a casual belief. And get this, he turned from evil. He was actively, intentionally avoiding sin. I mean, this is the portrait of a man at the absolute peak of moral and spiritual goodness. And in the ancient world, if you were this righteous, everyone assumed you'd be rewarded with prosperity. And Job, oh yeah, he was incredibly rich. His wealth was counted in livestock, starting with a mind-boggling 7,000 sheep. And that's not all. Add to that 3,000 camels. You gotta remember, camels were like the semi-trucks of the ancient world. This was a massive fleet for trade and transport. And to top it off, he had 1,000 work animals for farming, 500 teams of oxen, and 500 donkeys. This guy wasn't just wealthy, he was an agricultural powerhouse, a true titan of his time. So you get the picture, right? The bottom line is, Job had it all. A flawless character, a big, wonderful family, 7 sons, 3 daughters, and just immense wealth. The text literally calls him the greatest of all the people of the East. And in that worldview, all this success was seen as a clear sign of God's blessing on his righteous life. But just as we're getting comfortable with this perfect picture, bam, the scene shifts. The camera suddenly pans up from Earth, way up into the heavens. We get a peek behind the curtain into the divine council, where a cosmic drama is about to play out that will turn Job's world upside down. Here's the twist. Job has no idea, but the scene shifts to a heavenly court. And this figure known as Hasatan, or the accuser, he throws a challenge at God. He basically says, Job's goodness, it's just a transaction. He's only faithful because his life is good. Take it all away, and I guarantee you his faith will crumble. And God allows the test. And back on Earth, Job is completely in the dark about this cosmic test. All he knows is that in a terrifyingly short amount of time, everything is gone. His wealth is just wiped out. All 10 of his children are killed in a single freak accident, and then his own body breaks out in these excruciating sores. It is total, unimaginable devastation. And this is the line we all know. This is Job's famous first response. He doesn't curse God, he blesses him. And you know what? If the story ended right here in chapter 1, the cliché would be totally true. This would be a story about quiet patience. But the thing is, the story is just getting started. Because what happens next is what really drives the drama of the book. 3 of Job's friends show up to comfort him, and their visit starts out perfectly, but it definitely doesn't end that way. And at first, the friends get it so right. For 7 whole days and nights, they just sit with him in the ashes. No advice, no explanations, just the power of their presence. I mean, it's this profound act of compassion. But then, they open their mouths. After a week of silence, Job finally just explodes. He doesn't curse God, no, but he curses the day of his own birth. He unleashes this torrent of raw, honest, unfiltered grief and anger. This is not the patient Job of chapter 1. This is a man in agony, demanding to know why this is happening to him. And this brings us to the central conflict of the entire book. On one side, you have Job's reality, this raw grief and a desperate, burning demand for an audience with God. And on the other side, you have his friend's theology, this rigid, simple formula that says all suffering must be punishment for sin. They end up being way more committed to defending their theory than to comforting their friend. As Job refuses to accept their simple answers, their comfort gets more and more cruel. They go from these gentle suggestions to outright accusations, and by the end, they're basically yelling at him, claiming that the sheer scale of his suffering is definitive proof of some terrible hidden evil. They chose their theology over their friend, period. But Job refuses to back down. He maintains his integrity, and he keeps demanding that hearing with God. He will not confess to sins he didn't commit just to make his friend's theories work. And then, just when the argument hits its absolute peak, God shows up in a whirlwind to deliver a verdict that is absolutely stunning. This is it. This is the moment the entire story pivots on. Before God even talks to Job, he turns to the friends and delivers this shocking verdict. He says that they, the ones defending God with all their neat theological arguments, have not spoken correctly. And that Job, the one screaming, questioning, protesting, he is the one who has spoken what is right. Wow. Let's not miss this. God takes Job's side. He validates Job's raw, messy, honest struggle over the friend's cold, detached, correct theology. God is basically saying, his questions are closer to my heart than your answers. This is that moment of divine validation. So after correcting the friends, God then turns his attention to Job. But his response is not what anyone expects. He doesn't give some simple, neat explanation for why Job suffered. Instead of an answer, God gives Job a tour, a whirlwind tour of the entire cosmos. He points to the stars, the oceans, the wild, untamed animals. He's essentially saying, Job, look at the sheer complexity of this reality I'm holding together. You are right to sense that the world doesn't operate on simple formulas. See, God isn't trying to crush Job with his power. He's actually validating Job's feeling that things are profoundly complicated. The whole point of this speech wasn't to provide a tidy answer, but to offer something way more profound: divine presence. He's inviting Job to trust, not in a simple equation, but in a wise and attentive God who is right there with him, even when the reasons are hidden. So how does Job respond to all this? His final word is captured in this really fascinating Hebrew term, nechamti. It's a word that has this cool double meaning. On one hand, yeah, he's humbled by God's wisdom. But on the other, he's deeply comforted. And why is he comforted? Because the one thing he craved more than any answer, to just be seen and heard by God, had finally happened. So what does this ancient story mean for us, right here, right now? Well, it means that God's validation of Job is also a validation for you. So let's break it down. How does God validate the person who's honestly suffering? We see it in 4 key ways. 1, he publicly condemns that toxic idea that says, you must deserve this. 2, he listens to Job's unfiltered cries, proving they aren't offensive to him. 3, he restores Job not as some kind of payment, but as a public sign that he was never abandoned. And finally, 4, he honors the very person who was accused. He even makes him the one to pray for his accusers. This story, then, is really a form of divine permission. It's permission to be completely, 100% honest with our pain. Permission to cry out, to ask the hard questions, and to flat out reject the shallow, victim-blaming answers that so often get thrown at people who are hurting. Ultimately, the book of Job isn't some tidy formula to explain away suffering. It's a revelation of God's character. It reveals a God who doesn't stand with the comfortable theorists. He gets down in the ashes with the one who is broken, looks them in the eye and says, I am with you, I see you, and I'm not ashamed of your honest struggle.